I've been through some hard stuff, man. And yoga helped me a lot find peace with the loss of my sister, with grief, anger and resentment. And let me tell you, there's no tougher anger and resentment than when you're mad at God or you think God's mad at you. That's tough. That's heavy. And I've got family members that were raised Jehovah's Witnesses and left or got kicked out or something, and they're still just wrecked mentally. They're just sad. It worked for me. Yoga worked for me with my unique situation.
Welcome to the East Anchorage Book Club. I'm your host, Andrew Gray. The purpose of this podcast is to tell stories of Alaskans of interest and importance. Today, our guest is Bronson Frye. He is the statewide representative for the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, Local 1959. He apprenticed as a painter shortly after arriving in Anchorage after growing up in Homer. Bronson became the union rep in 2006 and has remained intricately involved in workers' rights and politics ever since, which is a surprising turn for someone raised a Jehovah's Witness. We talk about that journey, as well as his discovery of yoga. Bronson is the yoga teacher for the West Anchorage High School football team, and he's also taught in Alaska's prisons. He and his wife, Michelle, own their own yoga business, Luna with Soul. I'm dropping a link to their website in the show notes. Bronson Frye, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Tell us about your early life. Where did you grow up?
I was born in the Homer Hospital, and I lived there until I was 18. And then I moved to the big city, moved to Anchorage.
What year were you born?
1982.
1982. And so spent 0 to 18 in Homer.
Yeah.
Did you go to public school there?
I did public school from kindergarten through 7, and then I did homeschool grades 8 through 12, and I worked in the family business. I was the oldest of 6 kids and the only boy. So I had 5 little sisters, and the family business was cleaning carpets and painting houses and doing janitorial work. And so it was.
So you started doing that in 7th grade?
I worked with my dad ever since 8th grade, started doing homeschool and working, cleaning carpets and painting mostly. And I was like indentured servitude at the Frye house.
Did you feel like you were being treated differently than the kids that you'd gone to school with? Or did you think that was just normal?
Homeschool is totally different. I was super aware that I wasn't going to high school with everybody else. I was a bummer at the time. I always wanted to play high school football. One of my few actual regrets in life. And the Homer Mariners were terrible. I definitely would have started. Anyways.
Did your parents know that you wanted to play football?
Yeah, but I was raised in a super crazy religious sect, a Jehovah's Witness, and they wouldn't have supported that.
They wouldn't have supported playing any sports teams?
No extracurricular activity.
Because it would take your mind away from God?
Something like that. Yeah.
Did you door knock as a Jehovah's Witness?
I did extensively. In fact, when I was like 13, 14, 15, I spent 60 hours a month knocking on doors and offering free home Bible studies. And so it actually... Did
anyone take you up on the free home Bible studies?
Oh, sure, here and there.
So you would have to go back and do the Bible study, or did you do it right then?
No, that was the whole idea, was to come back. And that gave me a unique skill set. I was, in certain respects, socially stunted because I didn't go to high school, but I also was pretty comfortable talking to people and finding common ground and public speaking and things like that. I moved out of the house when I was 17. Then I moved to Anchorage when I was 18 and finished my high school homeschool and got a diploma, and then ended up getting into the Painters Union and starting an apprenticeship. 2 weeks after I turned 19, I was just a little baby.
You've been painting forever. You've been painting houses.
I had grown up doing it. And so I had a good work ethic too. That should not go understated. My dad did teach me how to work. That's good. So when I got into the workforce as an adult, even though I had a unique upbringing, didn't go to normal high school or whatever, I got along pretty well and definitely found a niche for the skill set that I have now, being a union representative. And that's interesting.
If I ask a couple more questions about your early life, was it a big Jehovah's Witness community in Homer?
Let's see, it's probably 50 so people maybe.
So pretty small, actually.
Yeah.
So y'all were pretty insular.
Yeah, real insular, because it was like, these are your friends, or pick out of this group who you want to hang out with, but pretty strict about not.
Were there any kids the same age as you?
There was a couple, and
those were your friends?
Those were my friends.
Are they still your friends?
Nope. I got kicked out of the church when I was 19, and everybody I'd ever known and friends and family all quit speaking to me. That was 20-something years ago.
So you don't have any contact with your friends or family from
Yeah. No, sad to say, my mom and dad haven't really spoken to me now in a couple decades. Kind of a weird, sad story.
That is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just hard for those of us who don't have that experience. Like, you have zero contact with any of your siblings.
Jehovah's Witnesses are, there's some odd ducks, man. They are an odd group of folks. And some of their dogma and traditions and constructs they've created to keep people in and kind of control whatever. And that's part of it. So they practice shunning, a very archaic form of social punishment. That's their way of keeping people locked into their organization.
Because the people who are there don't want to have what happened to you happen to them.
I mean, there was at one point where my dad brought 4 of my little sisters into my crappy apartment on Government Hill. And this was after I got kicked out, I don't know, a year or so later. And so he like lined them up in my living room and one by one, like ritualistically had them say goodbye to me because the Jehovah's Witness Church, the Watchtower magazine had made it very clear that Armageddon, the judgment day, end times, is coming within the next 6 months. And this is the last time they're going to ever see you alive.
Were they crying?
Oh, yeah, dude. It was horrible. So I gave them all hugs, this and that. And then they left. Of course, that was 20 years ago. But I sometimes think about the effect that would have had on the psyche of my little sisters, these little preteen girls. Geez, if dad and mom will do that to our brother, they'll definitely do it to me too. So that's scary and a heavy dose of control and sad too.
I mean, I'm sure you've been back to Homer in the last 20 years.
Oh yeah, I like Homer.
And you haven't run into them or seen them or...
Actually, this last summer, I was driving down Old Sterling by Anchor Point, and I was like, hey, there's my dad. He was like working on something by the side of the road. I think they got property out there or something. I don't know.
You didn't say hi?
There's not anything to say or whatever. And the thing is, they don't want, that. I want to, the thing is, I don't want to disrespect their whatever, so at this point, there's not really much to say.
One thing about Jehovah's Witness, when I door knock campaigning,
Sure.
I occasionally door knock on Jehovah's Witnesses houses, and that's a quick door knock because they say we don't vote, we're Jehovah's Witness. So growing up in a family where you don't vote and you are purposely removed from politics, so you do not engage. That's an unusual upbringing for somebody who's a union leader, very involved in politics.
Yes, it is. It's interesting because when I first joined the union as an apprentice at 19, the business representative at the time was real involved in politics. And so he would engage with me and lean on me to vote and to volunteer, this and that. And I was real resistant at first, but it was one of those things where eventually I started to realize, hey, there's a struggle here. There's a fight to be had. There's, in my mind anyways, pretty clear good team and a not as good team. And I got a little more involved, and actually it's a crazy story because I didn't know anything about civics, really. As you can imagine, that was not a highlighted subject. And in 2008, I ended up running for state house in a Democratic primary, which ended up being contested, which was a surprise. Oh my gosh, long story. I don't know if we got time for it.
No, we do.
We do.
So 2008, you were 26.
Yep.
So you'd done your apprenticeship. You were active in the union.
Yep. And it was actually Bill Wilikowski that talked me into it and recruited me. And
you were running for South Midtown?
It was the Diamond Business District at the time. So it was like, where was I? Independence Park is where I lived. What they needed was a placeholder to run against Ralph Samuels, who was the juggernaut. And Chris Tuck had run against Ralph Samuels a couple times and lost. He didn't really want to do it again. And so they needed someone to run. And so I got talked into it, basically. And then there was, to everyone's surprise, another Democrat popped up. I'd filed, and I was like, what? Who's this guy? And so we had this big meeting at the party headquarters, and I don't know. I wasn't impressed with this other guy. He was a slumlord dude. And I was like, now I got to at least beat this guy. I can't let him go do it. So then it turned into a contested primary and an open seat. Oh, I forgot that part. 2 days or 3 days after the filing deadline, Ralph Samuels dropped out of the race, quit the legislature, and took a big payday with Holland Tours. And so then it became an open seat and a contested primary. So it just went from 0 to 100 miles an hour right away. Anyways, at the end of the day, when the dust settled, I won the Democratic primary. I was under a ton of pressure, and I had a girlfriend that was not super thrilled with this, waking up one day, I'm going to be a politician. I was in love, and it was a little overwhelming, and I stepped out of the race. Chris Tuck stepped back in, and then he won.
I think Chris Tuck told us when he was on the podcast that y'all were in the car together, like at Division of Elections. It was like 5 p.m. deadline.
Right. Yeah.
You did it at the very last
4:58.
minute.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the party chair or precinct chair, something like that, somebody appoints. Mm-hmm. If the candidate who won the primary drops out, there's like a timeline. And anyway, so he got into the race for the general election and won. 2008 was Barack Obama. That was Mark Begich.
It was a big Democrat year.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was pretty fun. But I learned a lot about civics. That was part of when they were leaning on me to run and be like a placeholder. It wasn't my natural inclination, but I did think to myself, I am severely undereducated on the political machine. But if I really wanted to learn seriously how it works, how the campaigns work, the relationships between all the different people, how does it go? Run for office. Just do it yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. And that worked. I did learn a lot. I did meet a bunch of really cool people. And yeah, I've been involved pretty actively in politics ever since then.
I'm going to go to just like a more controversial space.
Perfect.
So you were running in the Democratic primary in 2008, won the Democratic primary. Mm-hmm. My feeling in 2024 is that union folks being Democrats is not a given. There really is a contingency of working class folks that really love Trump. And how do you explain that? And B, how do you navigate it as a union leader?
Great questions. So let's start with why the unions often support Democrats. And that's the easy answer, because the policies that typically are promoted and passed that help working people come mostly from the progressive left Democrat side, period. And that's not really that debatable or controversial. You can talk about in construction, prevailing wage, right to work. There's a lot of things that really are supported and promoted and protected by Democrats, more so than Republicans. So that's why that mostly unions are oftentimes supporting Democrats, is because they have the good labor policy. And so that's pretty easy. The second part of the question is more challenging, which is why do so many people love Donald Trump? Some of them even union members, a lot of them. And the easy answer is social issues and different things that are unrelated to labor. And one of the things that we're living through now is that we have Joe Biden, and history will judge him however it judges him, but especially particularly construction. That did put $2 trillion on the table. And we're going to have a 10-year boom in construction, particularly in Alaska, but really all over the country. And that is going to be a great driver for people's economic good jobs and everything else. And weirdly enough, that, I guess, frees people up to cast their vote based on some social issue or whatever, because they are going to reap the benefits of these economic policies that old ass Joe Biden passed. It's a weird thing. I'm looking forwards a little bit and looking backwards a little bit here, but that's how I feel where we're at.
Somehow Trump has branded himself as the working guy's candidate, whereas Kamala Harris and the Democrats were more of the elite party.
Well, he made it branded himself that, but the idea that Donald Trump somehow supports the working man is preposterous. Get what one policy that guy has done that has helped anyone who's not a millionaire.
Right.
Oh, come on, give me a break. So he can brand or he can talk about whatever he wants to talk about, but the reality when it comes to the policy, there's no comparison at all.
You feel pretty safe, though, that the $2 trillion is it's there no matter what. Things are going to be good for you guys for the
Great
next 10
question.
years.
I suppose it's conceivable some of the money goes away. I don't know the inner workings of everything. I don't think so, though. I think Congress basically passed it and has it spent and it's moving along. And also, why would Trump do that? Shit. He's going to reap the benefits politically for this big boom. He didn't have to do any of the heavy lifting. Biden did all the hard work of passing the darn thing and whatever. And it's just how it goes in politics.
Bouncing back to 19, you're an apprentice, and it sounded like the person that you were apprenticing with was pretty political, involved in unions. You were pretty much a union member from day one.
Yeah, man. I joined the union when I was 19. I never really heard about unions or apprenticeships in Homer too much. I moved to Anchorage. I was cleaning carpets because that's what I knew how to do, clean carpets, paint houses. And I was in somebody's house cleaning their carpet. Some guy said, hey, there's a job painting that pays $30 an hour. I was making like $9 an hour, $11 an hour or something. I was like, holy crap, I know how to paint. Anyways, it was at the school district, painting modular school units. And of course, when he was talking about $30 an hour, he was talking about prevailing wage. I didn't know anything about that either. And anyway, I got a phone book, an actual old phone book.
What is prevailing wage?
Prevailing wage is also called Davis-Bacon, is a wage that is set when there's public funds used to build a project. Then no matter who's on that job, union or non-union, there's a standard rate that has to be met. And in the state of Alaska, that rate is set by the unions. The union wage and benefit package added together, which we might call it the total package, gets prevailed twice a year in Alaska, April 1st and September 1st. The Department of Labor sends forms to all the unions. It says, what is your current rate? You have pay and benefits all totaled together. And then that gets updated twice a year. And then if you're non-union, you make that total amount in your wage. It helps everybody. And that's a good example of how unions help everybody, even non-union workers. Thank you for asking that. I ultimately got a phone book and started calling school district numbers. I don't know how this worked. Anyway, some lady told me, go to the union hall and get this certification you need. Just walked in one day, scraped every penny I had, like literally under couch cushions and everything. I needed $300 to take this class at the union hall, a hazardous paint handlers class. If you paint more than 40 hours a month in the state of Alaska, you're supposed to have this certification. Anyway, at the morning coffee break, the guy teaching the class was the apprenticeship coordinator. And he says, hey, young man, why don't you start an apprenticeship? Have you ever thought about that? I never even heard of it. He says, it costs $300 to get in the union and start an apprenticeship. And if you're in the union, then all your classes are free. So why don't we just apply your money that you brought in to pay for this class? And we'll do that. I put in 2 weeks notice at my carpet cleaning job, because that's what you do. And then went down to the union hall and signed up. And later that afternoon, I was down at the Port of Anchorage, grinding steel, 107 feet in the air. Away I go. Yeah.
And how long before you became a leader in the union?
The apprenticeship was 6,000 hours. So that was 4 or 5 years or so. And after that, I became a journeyman or journey level worker, which is just someone who's well qualified in all aspects of a trade. And then had an opportunity to be a foreman. So that's someone on the construction site directing the crew and who's doing what each day. Did that for a year or so. And then I had taken a class on union organizing. In fact, weirdly enough, it was taught by Chris Tugg, a former union organizer at IBEW. It was like a 40-hour class, though. It was a week-long deal. And learned a little bit about labor law and different things and whatever, organizing strategies. And I really got fascinated by that. And that was really when I became aware of the great struggle for the working class. I was like, oh, there's definitely like a fight to be had here. And I'm a little scrappy, so like I want to get in on this and help out. And I think it was a part of being something bigger than myself, which is what, growing up in a religion like the Jehovah's Witnesses, you are part of something bigger. And so I actually got kicked out of the church 6 months after I joined the union. I joined the union in June 2001 and then got kicked out in October 2001.
What was the exact reason that you were kicked out of the church?
Oh, I shoplifted some tools and some CDs, and my buddy who was doing it with me was also in the church. He got in trouble for something else. And then in the middle of his little trial with the church elders, he threw my name out there. Hey, Bronson got this stuff. We didn't pay for it, which I confess. I was like, yes, sorry, took it all back. I was like, I have sinned. Anyways, it was a whole big fiasco, 11 hours of meetings with these old guys in the back room of the church, grilling me on every which way. And I thought it was a great opportunity to have a clean slate. So I stupidly went home and wrote down every sin I could think of committing, watching R-rated movies or something, stuff like that, whatever, nothing major. And there was no drugs, there were no women, there was nothing really bad. But anyways, they had a different opinion. And really what it came down to is that these guys judged me as unrepentant because of what I had told, like the things that I confessed that they didn't know about. They said, this thieving is bad enough to kick you out, but it's all this other stuff which you just voluntarily told us that makes us think that you're an unrepentant sinner. And as an unrepentant sinner, quote unquote, you're up there with Judas and Adam and Hitler and all the bad ones. So they booted me out.
So I don't know a lot about this, but you're my second Jehovah's Witness on the program. We had Senator Elvie Ray Jackson was on. She was cast out, but then she got back in.
Right.
So she had to attend and no one was allowed to speak to her, and she had to go 3 times a week or something like that.
Yes.
So was that an option for you or no?
Yeah, it's funny because I listened to that podcast that you did with Senator Gray Jackson, and we had a real similar. I mean, she and I are pretty good friends. We talk about this stuff. And yes, I did the same thing. I went to church 3 times a week. Super weird to go into the church where all your friends are, that they just, like a ghost, you can walk through a crowd of people and everybody just turns away, looks away, doesn't speak to you, and doesn't say hi. And similar to Elvie, who she actually got back in, was reinstated, and then quit going.
Yeah.
I did something real similar. I went and applied to be reinstated, met with the elders. They said, give us 2 more months or keep coming for another 2 months. And I was so fixated. This is about a year after I got kicked out. I've been going, and I've been so fixated on whether or not I could get back in. I never stopped to think if I should. And once I was right there on the precipice, I was like, now wait a minute here. And part of it, Andrew, was that I had made friends that supported me during this darkest time of my life. And I would have been expected to turn my back on them and cease association. And the whole thing started to slowly unravel in my mind from that. Just like one little thread you pull out. I was like, that just doesn't quite seem, this don't seem right. These are the people that showed me love when I was in the hardest time ever. My own family not even talking to me. And then I got to turn my back on them. It just didn't seem right. And then eventually, it took another couple of years, but I eventually started actually questioning the doctrine and like getting more angry.
You know, when your dad came and brought your sisters to say goodbye to you, and it was because Armageddon was happening in 6 months, and Armageddon didn't happen.
Sure.
How did they?
Well, he may have read into something. They're not quite, they won't come straight out and say, like, they'll suggest it and allude to it and hint at. And that's an interesting thing. Senator Gray Jackson mentioned that too. That was one of the things that turned her off, was they had hinted around at such and such date would be the end of the world. Day. And then it came and went. They turned a lot of people off. So I don't know what exactly he read that made him think that, because I wasn't reading any of that stuff. But whatever. It's a bizarre, sad way to live your life. I kind of pity them, if I'm being totally honest. I don't need them in my life at this point. The story has a happy ending. I'm good. I have a wonderful family of my own. My wife is incredible and everything's good. But I feel like I have something to offer my family, my sisters, and not being able to give my love back to them is a bummer. Super tragedy hit our family a couple years after I was disfellowshipped from the church. My 20-year-old sister accidentally shot and killed my 18-year-old sister in a moose hunting accident on Calgan Island, just off by Kenai. And basically they got split up and a couple moose ran between them. And then my 20-year-old sister started shooting, not realizing whatever. And Jesus Christ, what a horrible deal. So
Did you go to the funeral?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But so here's where I'm going with this. The reason I bring that up is that the Jehovah's Witnesses have their hope for the future, resurrection, their doctrinal, what they believe when it comes to death and the afterlife and all this stuff, right? So for me, just jump up on a soapbox and wag my finger in their face and call them stupid idiots because they believe a kooky, dumb religion that's obviously made up crock of crap makes me a jerk. Why do I got to go around pulling the rug out from under him? So it's, look, my dad didn't throw enough, man. His baby girl bled to death in his arms. He don't need me getting on his ass. You know what I mean? That ain't what I'm about. The old man can go walk his path. I'm going to go walk my path. And I'm not going to bang the table and call him crazy and make a big spectacle out of this because I don't think that's appropriate and they've been through enough. But I do regret that I can't be there for them. I think that I have things I could offer my beautiful little sisters and my parents that have gone through this tragedy, and not being able to be there for them is actually the saddest thing. I don't really need anything from them my way, but they seem to be doing okay. Yeah.
You were journeyman.
Sure.
And then you did this union training.
I was exposed to union organizing through a class I took taught by Chris Tuck, weirdly enough. And eventually the union started setting aside 25 cents an hour to an organizing fund, so we could hire an organizer. Did that for a year. And the business manager at the time, the guy that got me into politics and leaned on me, who really became like a father figure. I remember going in there when this whole thing with my family happened, just crying and the union, oh shit, just what a mess. He would be there for me and kind of whatever, support me through a tough time. But yeah, he hired me. He gave me a shot. And that was, man, I'll always be grateful for that. And that was June of 2007.
You became the union organizer.
Yeah, full-time union organizer for the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. So our union represents painters, drywall finishers, like mud and a pan and knife, also called tapers, glazers, which is glass workers, guys that set and install glass, do architectural metal, floor covering is in our union, and we also represent sign and display workers. So like a lot of the Corex yard signs, and if they're union made, they'll be signatory with our union. So that's the allied trades part of painters and allied trades. Yeah, I started doing full-time union organizing.
And are you still doing that job?
Yes, my title has changed. I'm now the elected business representative for the state of Alaska. I am the only guy, so I am also the organizer. I'm also do government affairs.
Gotcha.
And also
so it's like you have the same job, but it's expanded in scope.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to say it, yeah.
And what's that experience been like?
Tremendous honor. Here's how I like to explain it. Not very many people in this world or in this country would wake up in the morning and say they really like their job. And out of that small group, there's even a smaller part of that group that is truly passionate about their job. And I get to say both every day. It's wonderful. I love the union members that I get to represent, and I enjoy talking to workers about how they can better their life, take care of their families. I love talking to young people about opportunities in a union's apprenticeship program to learn a skilled trade, have a livable wage and family sustaining benefits. All the different parts. I like interacting with management and negotiating collective bargaining agreements and writing them and enforcing them. And those things I enjoy. And the political government affairs side of it. I don't know how it happens. But yeah, it's something I enjoy and get into it because it's something that I'm passionate about and it's important for the job, but it's also something I enjoy.
What are the union's big concerns right now?
Yeah, I think I can speak to that with a certain amount of confidence. That is workforce development. So we have a demographic shift in our country, demographic age-wise, not like race-wise, but that's happening where after World War II, we had the baby boomers, the largest generation of humans we've ever had. And they all, let's just call it roughly 1950. So 20 years later, they enter the workforce, roughly 1970. You fast forward that till the 2020s, and they're starting to leave. You can actually look at charts and graphs, and 2023 is the year that the majority of the baby boomer generation having retired. What that means is there's acute labor shortages across every industry, but construction has the aforementioned $2 trillion on the table. So we have a particular boom in front of us for the next 10 or 15 years and a labor shortage. It's a great opportunity too, right? Every crisis is an opportunity. So what that means is that a young person who is entering the workforce now, first off, it's the best time to enter the workforce in the last 50 years. You have less competition and everybody wants you. We're about to see a sharp upward adjustment in wages in every industry across the board because that's how you're going to attract people. But particularly in Alaska, we have over $8 billion of construction coming to us. I was at a conference in August in Florida, and they had a politician speaking to us, and she was all excited. And she says, we've got $9 billion construction coming to Florida. It's going to be wonderful. And I grabbed my phone. What is the population of Florida? 22 million. We have 700,000 people with $8 billion.
Wow.
She was all excited because they got 9 billion with 22 million people. So we have more money per capita coming to Alaska for construction than anybody else in the nation by orders of magnitude. So my message to young people is you have the great opportunity to get into construction, have a great career, but also specifically in Alaska. You can stay, you can live, you can have a good career here.
One of my concerns is about building housing that people can afford.
Mm-hmm.
I've met with some major property owners talking about how building new apartment complexes, for example, doesn't pencil out because the cost of construction, the cost of labor would result in apartments that would have to be rented for a price that is so far above what the current market is that no one would rent that 2-bedroom apartment, for example. And my fear is we have some pretty major construction projects happening in my district. ANMC has a very large emergency room expansion happening, for example.
Yes.
$251 million, I believe.
Yep.
And so what I think about is if you've got major construction projects happening where there's a ton of money pouring in, they can afford to pay top dollar for labor. And then you've got somebody over here doing a small home project, but they've got to compete for labor with this other project that is like top dollar.
Right.
And so I don't know if there's a solution, but when I hear that one of the major drivers in the cost of construction is the price of labor, I think about what do we do to make it so that we can build some affordable houses. I've got people living in some really run down rentals that probably should be torn down and rebuilt, but we can't afford to.
That's a multifaceted problem. It's probably got a multifaceted solution. I think you could probably start by making sure that all those people have jobs that pay livable wages so they can afford the housing, whatever it might cost. So that's for starters. Second thing I would add is that the cost of everything has gone up. Materials has gone up, everything there is. And labor, which is good, by the way, that people are being paid more.
Can I ask what the prevailing wage is now? Because you said it was like $30 an hour back in 2002.
Oh, for the painters, it's 65-ish. But we're at the lower end of that, all the different construction trades.
So $65 an hour is the prevailing wage?
But yeah, but for something in that ballpark, that's your wage and your benefits together.
Gotcha.
So the wage,
so not what they're taking home.
No, the wage is for painters about 35, and then the benefits are on top of that, about 20 or 25. So here's one of the interesting things about these housing deals, and this is a conversation that I'm hearing everywhere, is with this acute labor shortage, everybody is fighting over the few workers that are left. And so naturally the workers go to where they're making the most money.
Right.
And so I don't know how even anything is supposed to be done if your plan or the plan or a plan is to pay the least. You will not have the workers to do it. And I think people are just now waking up to that. And that's why the people in your district and all the people in those housing, they need to be afforded an opportunity to have a good paying job and a livable wage and everything else too. Otherwise, we are stuck.
Not to dwell on the $65 an hour, but if I were a young person thinking about my future, working a job that was like $18 or $19 an hour, and I heard that there was jobs out there paying $65 an hour, I would want to know, how do I get that job?
Just like
how do they? How do they do
cleaning
it?
carpets.
Yeah.
Finding that phone book. I don't know. I think unions were probably not as good as we should be at telling people how awesome we are. For instance, construction union apprenticeship programs are the largest privately funded educational institution in America. That is something that's amazing. We hardly ever talk about it. So getting the word out to particularly the youth is what everyone is talking about right now. I coach high school football and have made a little video where I went around and interviewed union members who used to play high school sports. And what's your favorite high school sports memory? And then what was your experience like as an apprentice in the union? It's about 10 minutes long. The head coach has allowed me to show that to the team every, once a year, little gatherings and whatnot. Parents can check it out. So that's just one small example of how we're trying to do direct outreach into the community. You have to have a relationship. You got to know where these young folks are at.
Where do you coach?
West Anchorage Eagles. Oh. Yeah.
And I'm sure that those kids ask you, did you play high school? And you have to say no.
No, yeah. And that's okay because my role on the team, I am the yoga and mental strength coach. So I'm a yoga teacher as well. And so with the team, I do breathing exercises in the game, on the sideline, and at halftime. And then we'll do regular stretching type of yoga before the game day or whatever.
I did your yoga class too.
That's right. Thank you.
Very good.
You are a yoga teacher.
I was. So I know when a yoga class is good.
Totally.
You teach a very good yoga class. You and your wife, because y'all did it together.
Yeah.
Did y'all meet through yoga?
Yeah, actually. Yoga and indoor cycling.
Tell us how you got involved in yoga. And I mean,
yeah, that's a good question. I was 30 and I had broke up with my girlfriend. I was super heartbroken. I tore my ACL playing flag football at the Dome. So I was physically broken. And I turned 30. Oh my God, I was getting old. And so I was just having this whole sad time. And I ran into a girl I knew down at a coffee shop. And she invited me to a yoga class. She was doing a 30-day challenge. She's like, trying to go every day for 30 days. I was like, all right, I'll go. So I went in there and I never stopped going. I went every day.
Did you do the 30-day challenge as well?
I went every day for 6 months. I was in a really depressed, lame place, heartbroken and this and that. So I wasn't thriving, but I knew that it was a spot that would allow me to heal a little bit physically and that it was just good people to be around and good environment to be around. And I also, it's weird because I had spent all my life as a Jehovah's Witness knocking on doors and doing public speaking. When I was 11 years old, I gave a 5-minute Bible talk at the Sullivan Arena in front of 4,000 people. I was a little fiery, zealous dude. And part of me missed that form of expression, just being in front of people and sharing what you are passionate about. And I was laying in Savasana at the end of my second yoga class, just covered in sweat. And I was like, I'm going to be a yoga teacher and I'm going to be great at it. I just made my mind up right then.
So I was going to ask about that. So you left Jehovah's Witness. You didn't replace it with another religion. You didn't have a religion.
Yeah. Okay. I'm so glad you asked. This is going to be awesome. I love sharing this. Thanks for asking. So through my 20s, I was borderline atheist, agnostic for sure. The pendulum swung the other way. I was angry and I had a lot of resentment, as you might expect. Went into my yoga teacher training. And the first weekend, the instructor has to address the God thing because it's like, is my pastor going to be pissed at me for being here? And the instructor...
I know people who've been told by their pastor that they can't go to.
Sure. Oh, Jehovah's Witnesses don't go to yoga.
Yeah.
But look at me. I'm such a rebel. Politics, yoga. Just breaking all the rules, Bronson. Anyways, so I'm listening to this conversation and she's talking about divinity, the concept of divinity. And so I was curious. I raised my hand. I said, what if you're an atheist? Without missing a beat, without a second's hesitation, she goes, well, then you're in the wrong class. I said, all right. And I said, look, I paid to do this. No sense in coming in with a chip on my shoulder and a bad attitude, open heart, open mind. And to my surprise, during that 200-hour yoga teacher training, I revisited the concept of divinity. There was a spark. There was a thing that I didn't expect to find or to experience. And it was so different than what I had experienced as a real rigid Christian upbringing that it was hard to come to terms with that at first. But the more I got involved, like moving past just the physical asana postures of yoga and getting into the more deeper, like the concepts of divinity, big time game changer. And through that, and this is why I teach yoga, this is what I love about it, I was able to let go of that anger and that resentment And that has motivated me to instruct yoga, but also to explore non-traditional places to share yoga. So I did the studios and the big lights and the music and the mirrors and the pretty people and all that jazz. But after a while, that kind of wasn't with the yoga path I wanted to walk. And so I have a friend, David Westlake is his name, and he invited me to join him teaching yoga in the prison system. And so we've been all over the state. I tell people often that the highest level of human communication I've ever engaged in was teaching yoga at the Spring Creek, the maximum security prison. Profound, powerful. If you want to find a place full of anger and resentment, go to a prison, go to a jail. And when you have the opportunity to talk about things like personal freedom and inward liberation, you can see the baddest dudes on earth getting a little misty-eyed, little quivery, and you can have some pretty powerful experiences. I'm very blessed to have been able to do that. COVID messed up some of the prison stuff, but that's also what led me to start doing yoga with football teams. I coached Pop Warner, like youth football, for a couple years. And so I had some background in coaching, a limited amount. And a couple of the kids that I coached in Pop Warner went to West in high school. And their dad told the head coach, hey, my boy Bronson's a yoga teacher. He'll come and do yoga with the team. That was in 2017 when I first started. And then in 2020, I joined like more full-time with the staff, as coaching staff. And talking to kids about letting go of anger and resentment is not necessarily the key. Although inside of a football game, you are going to explore all of the range of human emotions. But the idea of finding peace in the middle of chaos, yeah, that works for football for sure. Or prison, or just life. And I have found this isn't for everybody, right? Like I'm not here to sound like the one true path or whatever. But for me, I've been through some hard stuff, man. And yoga helped me a lot find peace with the loss of my sister, with grief, with anger and resentment. And let me tell you, there's no tougher anger and resentment than when you're mad at God or you think God's mad at you. That's tough. That's heavy. And I've got family members that were raised Jehovah's Witnesses and left or got kicked out or something, and they're still just wrecked mentally. They're just sad. It worked for me. Yoga worked for me with my unique situation, whatever. And I just feel motivated to share that with other people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a studio. My wife and I do have a little yoga business that we started doing a couple classes together. We co-teach, which is fun. Luna with Soul Yoga and Wellness, if anybody wants to. It's Sundays from 10 to 11:30. We co-teach. I do 45 minutes of vinyasa, like flow. And then she teaches 45 minutes of yin or deep stretch. It's a nice little combo. It's lunawithsoul.com, S-O-L. And lunawithsoul.yoga, AK, is our Instagram account and Facebook account. My wife wanted to make sure I
got it right.
Yeah, make sure I got it right. But Luna being the moon and sun, S-O-L. So like the sun, the moon, masculine and feminine and all that. That's our little yoga thing that we are doing, like classes. But I have often described yoga as a forest has lots of different paths in it. And you can walk down a path and explore it, and you might find somebody that's really knowledgeable about one little section of the path, but you might see a different path that attracts you, and you can walk down that and explore it a little bit. There's a lot of different ways to express yoga and to explore it, to learn about it, lots of different stuff to learn and do.
I always ask people at the end if they have a book they want to recommend, or I don't know if you have a book you want to recommend.
Yes.
You do.
The End of the World is Just the Beginning by Peter Zeihan.
Okay.
It's about demographics and geopolitics and globalization, or the end of globalization, a shift towards regionalization. But it explains a lot of the situation we're in, and then you can extrapolate where we might be headed from that. So The End of the World is Just the Beginning. It's about the one I've been hooked on lately.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much for the recommendation, and thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate it, man.
I'm dropping links in the show notes to the 2 podcast episodes referenced to former House Representative Chris Tuck and to Senator Elvie Gray Jackson's episodes. Thank you, listeners. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review us. To contact me, email rep.andrew.gray@akleg.gov or call 907-269-0123.